They said it wouldn't come to this. They said motherhood was sacred. They said the womb was a place of wonder. But now we stand on the battlefield of the unthinkable, a war not waged with tanks or guns, but with ideologies and lies, a war against the very vessel that cradles life itself. The end-time war is here, and its target is motherhood. Do you feel it? The shaking, the trembling beneath the surface of our society. Something ancient is being unearthed, and something sacred is being attacked. What once was honored is now mocked. What once was cherished is now discarded. What once was the crown of womanhood is now treated like a curse. They told us that liberation meant detachment, that power meant severing ties with the tender, that freedom meant rejecting what makes us human, and in this great deception the womb became a burden. The cry of a newborn became an inconvenience. The mother, once revered, became an afterthought in a culture drunk on self. But let me take you back. In the beginning, God formed man from the dust, but woman was not taken from dust. She was taken from man's side, crafted with care, with beauty, with grace. And within her, he placed the power no man would ever carry, the power to nurture, to sustain, to bring forth life. That was no accident, that was divine, and so it began, a covenant, the mother and her child. Flesh of her flesh, blood of her blood, a heartbeat within a heartbeat, a miracle within a miracle. She was not just carrying a child. She was partnering with God in the act of creation, but the enemy knew. From Eden to now, he knew. He feared the seed of the woman. He feared what she could carry. He feared the generations hidden within her. And so the attack was launched, not with brute force, but with seduction. Not with swords, but with slogans. You don't need that burden. You're more than just a mother. Your worth isn't found in children. Your body, your choice, and truth, sacred truth, was exchanged for empty mantras. The altar of Baal was repainted with progressive hues, but its appetite remained the same. They don't burn children with fire anymore. They do it with cold instruments and colder hearts, in sterile rooms with smiling faces and legal permits. They don't silence the cry of infants in the night. They prevent it from ever being heard. Do you see it now? This is not politics. This is prophecy. This is not just legislation. This is legacy. This war is not about women's rights. It's about robbing women of their divine identity. It's about severing the lifeline of generations. It's about rewriting the role of woman so completely that the image of God in her is obscured, erased, forgotten. And yet, hear me, God is not silent. Even now, he is calling the daughters of Zion to rise, to remember, to reclaim, because motherhood is not weakness. It is warfare. Every lullaby is a declaration. Every tear wiped is a victory. Every late night rocking a child is a testimony written in eternity. You are not just raising a child. You are shaping a destiny. There is a story, a true one. During the Holocaust, in the darkness of Auschwitz, a woman gave birth. In secret, in horror, in the shadows of death, she brought forth life. There were no midwives, no celebration, no hospital, just blood and fear and a flicker of hope. That child lived. That mother chose life when everything around her screamed death. What's our excuse? We live in comfort. We live with options. We live with safety nets and resources and support. And yet the war rages, but now the enemy doesn't come with guns. He comes through education, through media, through influencers with dead eyes and million-dollar smiles, convincing a generation that motherhood is outdated, oppressive, unnecessary. But they forget. Mothers are the backbone of nations, the heart of homes, the keepers of stories, the guardians of faith. And now I speak to you, mother who feels unseen, woman who wonders if her life counts, daughter who fears that motherhood will erase her dreams. Listen, the greatest things ever birthed were not born in noise. They were born in hidden places. Mary said yes to God in silence. Hannah wept in secret. Sarah laughed behind a curtain. But all of them carried promise. All of them changed the world. So rise up, Deborahs of this age. Rise, Esthers and Ruths. This war will not be won in the courts of men, but in the courts of heaven, and in the quiet courage of mothers who refuse to give up, give in, or back down. We don't need more laws. We need more love. We don't need more slogans. We need more truth. We don't need more progress. We need more purpose. and that purpose begins in the womb. This is the hour, this is the shaking. And though the world may rage, the gates of hell shall not prevail, not against a praying mother, not against a woman on her knees, not against the fierce, blazing love of the one who births and battles in the same breath. So mothers, hold the line. Daughters, take your place. Fathers, rise and bless the wombs that carry your legacy. Because in this war we do not fight alone. Heaven fights with us, and the victory, it's already written. Life wins. Motherhood is divine, not disposable. It is not a social construct, a biological accident, or an outdated role imposed by patriarchal tradition. It is a sacred appointment, etched into the very fabric of creation. Before there were kings or prophets, before nations rose and fell, there was a woman and her child. The first breath of mankind did not come from a throne room or a battlefield. It came from a womb. That was not incidental. That was intentional. It was divine. To carry life is to step into a partnership with the Creator Himself. The womb becomes a sanctuary, a hidden tabernacle where heaven touches earth. Cells divide, bones form, hearts begin to beat, under the shadow of a woman's ribs. That is not ordinary. That is holy ground. And yet, in a world that praises ambition, applauds independence, and elevates self above sacrifice, the divine role of motherhood has been pushed aside, downgraded, and in many cases outright despised. The culture now speaks of children not as blessings but as burdens. We hear that to mother is to lose yourself, to give up your dreams, to become invisible in a world of achievers. But the truth is far deeper. To mother is not to lose yourself, but to find the highest version of yourself. Because love, in its purest and most powerful form, is sacrificial, and no one understands sacrificial love like a mother. She wakes in the middle of the night, not out of obligation, but out of instinct. She gives even when her body aches and her spirit is weary. She walks through fire for her child, not because she is forced to, but because her heart has been rewired by divine design. The world may not give her awards, promotions, or recognition, but heaven sees, and heaven honors, because in every act of unseen love there is an echo of eternity. This is why motherhood cannot be disposable. To treat it as such is to strip away one of the most sacred assignments given to humanity. When a society begins to devalue motherhood, it is not just a social shift, it is a spiritual rupture. It is the unraveling of the design set in motion from the beginning of time. A mother is not just raising a child. She is shaping a soul, molding a world, laying the foundation for future generations. Even nature testifies to this truth. Look at the animal kingdom. The mother eagle shields her eaglets with her wings. The lioness fights off threats with primal ferocity. The elephant carries her young for nearly 2 years, patiently sustaining the life within her. Creation understands what we, in our pride, have tried to forget, that to bring forth life is one of the highest callings, not just in humanity, but in existence itself. And yet, the lie persists, the lie that says motherhood is second best, that the boardroom matters more than the nursery, that a title on a desk is more powerful than the title of mom. But no CEO, no politician, no celebrity ever drew their first breath without a mother. No man or woman ever learned to speak, to walk, to dream, without first being carried, nourished, and loved. Some of the most powerful leaders in history rose from the quiet strength of mothers whose names the world never knew. Their influence did not come through speeches or campaigns, but through whispered prayers, faithful discipline, and unwavering love. The world may overlook them, but God never does, because in the economy of heaven, the one who lays down her life for another is the greatest of all. The attack on motherhood is not random, it is strategic, because if the enemy can dismantle the mother, he can destabilize the home. If he can convince a generation that the womb is a prison rather than a promise, he can cut off the future before it begins. If he can erase the divine from the feminine, he can rob the world of its most powerful force of nurture and life. This is why the role of a mother cannot be redefined by trends or erased by ideologies. It is not ours to redefine, it was given by God. The world may try to rename it, reframe it, or replace it, but it cannot replicate it. No technology, no institution, no movement can mimic the divine intimacy between a mother and the child she carries. It is a miracle that science can observe but never duplicate. To be a mother is to live out a divine mystery. It is to be a vessel of creation, a bearer of dreams, a keeper of legacy. It is to weep over the hurts of another and rejoice over their victories more than your own. It is to give until there's nothing left, and then somehow give more, and in doing so, to mirror the heart of the one who gave everything so that life could flourish. Motherhood was never meant to be dismissed. It was meant to be defended. The war against motherhood is a spiritual deception. It is not merely a shift in societal norms or a byproduct of modern convenience. It is an orchestrated campaign, ancient in its roots, demonic in its intent, and disguised in the language of empowerment. Beneath the surface of progress, there is a battle raging, not against systems or structures, but against the sacred. And at the center of the crosshairs is the womb, the gate of life, and the woman who bears it. This war didn't begin with legislation or cultural revolutions. It began in a garden when the serpent first spoke lies into the ears of a woman. Did God really say? With one question, he planted the seed of doubt, not just about God's words, but about his design. That deception has echoed through generations, evolving in form but never in purpose. It seeks to sever the connection between woman and purpose, between motherhood and glory, between life and love. The enemy knows what many have forgotten, that motherhood is a divine weapon. It births prophets, it nurtures kings, it raises those who will carry truth to the ends of the earth, and so he lies, he distorts, he seduces. He speaks through influencers, through media, through institutions, whispering the same ancient deception in a modern tongue. You don't need this. You're better off without it. This holds you back. This ties you down. And like all deceptions, it carries a partial truth wrapped in a poisonous web. Yes, motherhood is hard. Yes, it costs something. Yes, it stretches and transforms. But so does anything that holds eternal value. The very fact that it costs so much is proof of its worth. Yet the spirit of the age calls good evil and evil good, and in doing so, shrouds the sacred role of motherhood in shame, burden, and irrelevance. This deception is not neutral, it is strategic, because if you can dismantle the honor of motherhood, you dismantle the home, and if you dismantle the home, you destabilize the soul of a nation. You cannot erase mothers without erasing the imprint they leave on every generation. The enemy understands this, which is why he invests so much in disguising the war as choice, as liberty, as rights. But choice that leads to destruction is not freedom, it's bondage. Liberty that requires the death of the innocent is not liberation, it's deception. This is not about shaming women, this is about awakening them. Many have been caught in the wave without even realizing the tide was engineered. They didn't choose war, they were born into it, raised in homes where motherhood was mocked, schooled in systems where career was worshipped, and children were treated as obstacles, fed lies from every screen, every headline, every book that told them their worth would be found everywhere except in the arms of the child they might one day carry. But deep down, the truth remains. It cannot be erased because it is etched into the spirit. When a woman feels her child move within her for the first time, there is something no feminist theory, no academic journal, no political doctrine can explain. It is divine, it is eternal, and the deception begins to crack. This is why the war is fought with such intensity, because the enemy fears what a mother can unleash. He fears the prayers whispered over cribs. He fears the strength that rises when her child is threatened. He fears the faith passed down in lullabies and stories. He fears the generational blessing that flows from a mother who knows who she is and why she was made. So the lies grow louder, the push intensifies. They say you can outsource love, that biology is irrelevant, that anyone and anything can fill the role of mother as long as there's structure and support. But motherhood was never just a task, it is a covenant, a spiritual imprint, a divine appointment that no substitute can replicate. Even the language is under siege. The word mother is being replaced, redefined, diluted to appease ideologies that reject the natural for the synthetic, the divine for the mechanical. And yet, no matter how they rename it, the truth still pulses through the DNA of every child. They were carried, nourished, birthed, not manufactured. There is a difference, and that difference matters. This war is not accidental. It is a calculated assault on the heart of God's design. It is spiritual because motherhood reflects something eternal. It reveals the nurturing, life-giving character of God. When we devalue the mother, we are not just attacking women, we are assaulting the image of God within them, and that is why the war is fierce. Not because motherhood is weak, but because it is powerful. Not because it is obsolete, but because it is essential. This deception has cost us much, generations lost, identity confused, homes broken, but truth is rising, the veil is lifting, and those who have been lied to are beginning to see with new eyes. Because even in the midst of deception, light finds a way, and when it does, the war begins to turn. Modern culture rewrites womanhood to erase its sacred power. The shift is subtle, but the damage is seismic. What was once revered is now rebranded. The essence of womanhood, the God-breathed design that placed within her the strength to carry, nurture, and birth life, has been slowly deconstructed and replaced with hollow imitations. Culture doesn't confront the divine directly, it replaces it. It doesn't destroy womanhood with force, it redefines it with flattery. The result is a generation of women trained to despise their own design. They are taught to see femininity as weakness, motherhood as a trap, and sacrifice as oppression. The nurturing spirit within them, once considered a sacred strength, is now seen as a liability. The soft edges, the intuitive heart, the deep well of compassion, these are no longer praised. They are treated as signs of submission to a bygone era. It began with a promise that to be truly free, a woman must become like a man, not just equal in value, which she always was, but identical in role, voice, and behavior. In this rewriting, femininity became optional, motherhood negotiable, and womanhood an ever-shifting construct. The culture speaks of choice, but it often pushes women to choose against themselves. It offers success in exchange for silence, power in exchange for purity, validation in exchange for identity. This rewriting goes beyond the surface. It is a spiritual disfigurement. The original design of womanhood was not just functional, it was prophetic. From Eve to Mary, from Deborah to Esther, the role of a woman in God's plan has always carried weight. She was not an afterthought, she was an answer. She was not created to compete with man, but to complete the picture of divine image bearing. Male and female together reflect the heart of God, and in her unique role as life-bearer, woman reveals something about God that no other creature can. His desire to bring forth, to protect, to nourish, and to sustain. But modern culture is uncomfortable with divine things. It is built on the worship of self, and self cannot endure the weight of sacrifice. So it unravels the threads of womanhood, one lie at a time. It tells girls to chase image over substance, independence over interdependence, and applause over legacy. It celebrates the woman who breaks glass ceilings, but ignores the one who builds solid foundations. It showcases the influencers and CEO, while hiding the mothers who hold nations together from behind closed doors. Even language has been manipulated. Words like nurture, submit, and serve are now used with disdain. Yet these were the very virtues that once elevated womanhood above the chaos of self-seeking. They were not signs of inferiority, but of inner strength. It takes more courage to give than to take, more wisdom to heal than to conquer, more depth to create life than to chase fleeting applause. In the rewriting of womanhood, even the biological is now contested. The very reality of being a woman, once rooted in the mystery of the womb, the rhythms of life, the gift of birth, is now treated as a fluid label, detachable from the body that bears it. The sacred is not just being ignored, it's being mocked. And behind it all is not just confusion, but rebellion. rebellion against a creator who made male and female in his image and called them good. What we see playing out is not liberation, it is erasure. Not advancement, but abandonment. The unique voice of woman, meant to echo heaven, is now often drowned in the noise of cultural trends, and many women, instead of feeling empowered, feel more lost, more anxious, more unfulfilled. Because deep down, the soul cannot thrive on counterfeit identity. It was made for truth. When womanhood is rewritten by culture, it loses its roots, and without roots, nothing bears fruit. The strength of woman was never in becoming what she is not, but in fully embracing what she already is. Not through society's lens, but through God's. He did not hide his glory in thrones or temples. He hid it in the womb. The first shelter of the Savior was not a palace, but the body of a woman. That was not random. That was revelation, and yet the world continues to trade truth for trends. It offers empowerment without purpose, freedom without form, identity without origin. But without origin, there is no meaning. And without meaning, even strength becomes hollow. The cultural rewriting of womanhood strips away not just the roles women play, but the eternal significance they carry. Every mother is a warrior shaping destiny. She may not wear armor or march with banners, but her battlefield is real, her enemies are fierce, and her victories are eternal. The world sees diapers, dishes, school runs, and sleepless nights. Heaven sees warfare, intercession, legacy, and divine authority moving through the quiet strength of a mother's love. She doesn't fight with swords, she fights with prayers. She doesn't command armies, but she commands atmospheres. She doesn't carry weapons, she carries generations. There's a reason the enemy fears her. It's because she builds what hell cannot destroy. When a mother wakes in the night to pray over her child, even as exhaustion threatens to silence her, something powerful happens in the spiritual realm. She is doing more than nurturing. She is guarding, shielding, covering a life with the full weight of her love and the full force of heaven. This is not mere parenting. This is prophecy in motion. Every word of affirmation, every correction rooted in truth, every decision to stay present even when it's hard, these are the actions of a warrior forging weapons in the fire of daily life. The enemy knows what many have forgotten, that a child formed by the hands of a praying mother becomes a threat to darkness. Every soul she shapes is a soul capable of transformation, of influence, of changing the tide for future generations. That's why the attack is fierce. That's why the war is personal. It's not about convenience, it's about calling. It's not about schedules, it's about strongholds. Motherhood is not a detour from purpose. It is the birthplace of it. In the scriptures, we see women who changed the course of nations not from palaces but from homes. Jochebed hid her son Moses from the slaughter, and in her quiet defiance, she preserved the deliverer of Israel. Hannah poured her heart out in prayer, not just asking for a child, but offering him back to God, and from her womb came a prophet who would anoint kings. Mary said yes to the unthinkable, carrying the Son of God despite shame, fear, and danger, because she understood that obedience births destiny. These women were not passive, they were not background characters, they were warriors. And every mother who has ever wept over a crib, laid hands on a fevered forehead, whispered scripture into anxious ears, or stood in faith while the world tried to steal her child, they stand in that same line of holy resistance. Motherhood is not weakness. It is warfare dressed in humility. The modern world tries to strip motherhood of its spiritual weight. It packages it in terms of productivity, schedules, and routines. It tries to reduce it to a checklist. Feed the baby, change the diaper, teach the lesson, clean the house, but heaven sees deeper. Heaven sees the spirit that hovers over a home, shaping the future through unseen acts of love and discipline. The world may never applaud the mother who lays down her ambitions for a season to raise a child, but heaven records every sacrifice. In a kingdom where the last are first, the quiet are mighty, even in failure, the mother fights. When she messes up, when she snaps in frustration, when she feels she's not enough, she doesn't quit. She gets back up, she prays again, she apologizes, she tries again. That too is warfare, because perseverance in the face of discouragement is one of the fiercest weapons of all. The enemy doesn't just want her children. He wants her to believe she has no impact. But the truth is, her very presence is a weapon. Her voice, her love, her faith. They are fire in the face of darkness. It's easy to overlook her. She walks through the grocery store with children clinging to her. She shows up to school meetings, wipes tears, packs lunches, juggles bills, and holds it all together with little sleep and even less recognition. But heaven does not overlook her. Angels are assigned to her home. Her prayers fill bowls in the throne room of God. Her legacy echoes long after she's gone, because a mother doesn't just raise children. She raises generations, nations, and movements. She is the first preacher her children ever hear, the first counselor they ever trust, the first intercessor who stands between them and the darkness. Her voice becomes the echo they carry into their adult years. Her touch becomes the memory of comfort when the world feels cold. Her example becomes the standard they look for when choosing who they will follow, who they will become. Even when the child strays, the warrior mother does not surrender. She wages war in the spirit, with groanings too deep for words, with scripture in her mouth and hope in her chest. And hell trembles when she prays, because one praying mother has the power to pull a generation out of bondage and into purpose. Revival begins in the womb, not in the courtroom. It does not start with the signing of bills or the passing of laws, but with the stirring of life in hidden places. The womb is not only the cradle of human life, it is the altar of divine purpose. Every movement of revival in history has required a vessel, a carrier, someone willing to say yes to what heaven was birthing. That vessel, more often than not, has been a mother. Because before God sends a prophet, he first forms a child. Before he releases a calling into the world, he cultivates it in the secret place of a woman's body. The womb is the first battlefield of destiny. It is where Satan has waged his fiercest attacks. From Pharaoh's edict to slaughter the Hebrew sons to Herod's massacre of the innocents, the enemy has always feared the child before the crown. He doesn't wait until they are grown to fight them. He attacks them in seed form. Because he knows that revival often wears the disguise of a child, what looks like weakness, what sounds like a cry in the night, what is swaddled in helplessness is often the very answer to decades of desperate prayer. The enemy targets the womb because he understands its potential. He knows that the child who grows within may one day tear down strongholds, raise up righteousness, and awaken the slumbering hearts of a generation. That is why abortion is not just a social issue. It is a spiritual one. It is not merely the termination of a pregnancy. It is the silencing of destinies before they can speak. It is the interruption of heaven's plans by the hand of fear, convenience, or deception. The womb, once honored as sacred, is now seen by many as negotiable, optional, even disposable. Yet heaven still writes destiny in the language of life. Revival does not begin with platforms or pulpits. It begins with conception. It begins with a mother willing to carry something greater than herself. It begins with a woman saying yes, not knowing all the cost, not understanding all the future, but surrendering to the mystery of divine purpose. It begins with pain, discomfort, patience, and often isolation. Because revival requires incubation. It requires hiddenness before it demands visibility. When God wanted to change the world, he did not raise up a politician. He overshadowed a young girl named Mary. He did not build a movement in the temple first. He began it in the womb. The answer to sin, death, and darkness came through the quiet obedience of a mother. Mary didn't understand it all, but she knew the voice of God. Her womb became the Holy of Holies, the temple not built by hands but by heaven's design. What she carried shifted the ages. That is the pattern of God. He plants revival in the most unexpected places. Not in the courts of the powerful, but in the hearts of the surrendered. Not in legislated power, but in covenant relationship. The womb is a prophetic picture of that reality. It is the place where potential waits, where heaven partners with humanity to form life, purpose, and legacy. Revival begins in the womb because the womb is about more than biology. It is about receptivity, nurture, protection, and release. It is about saying yes to something unseen and unknown, trusting that what God has placed within will one day impact the world beyond. That's what mothers do. They believe before anyone else does. They invest before the fruit is visible. They fight for what no one else even knows exists. That kind of faith, that kind of love, is the seedbed of revival. Culture says the future belongs to those who win elections. Heaven says the future belongs to those who raise children in truth. Culture says change comes through protest. Heaven says change comes through discipleship. Culture says progress is measured in policies. Heaven says progress is measured in people, and the very first person to shape that progress is a mother. It is no coincidence that the attack on the womb coincides with the moral collapse of nations. As the womb is devalued, so is life. As mothers are demeaned, so is truth. When the source of life is treated as a burden, the fruit of life becomes disposable. Revival cannot flourish where life is not honored. And so the enemy rages against the womb, not because it is weak, but because it is powerful. Every time a mother says yes to life, she pushes back the darkness. Every time she chooses to nurture, to teach, to disciple, to protect, she partners with heaven's strategy for renewal. The child she raises may be the intercessor who breaks the stronghold, the leader who rebuilds the wall, the voice who calls a generation back to holiness. Revival does not begin with fame. It begins with formation. Not in the stadiums, but in the secret places, not in a crowd, but in a cradle. The war against motherhood is not just a cultural drift. It is a spiritual emergency. We are living in a time when what is holy is mocked, what is natural is redefined, and what is sacred is treated as optional. But the womb was never meant to be a battlefield for ideology. It was always meant to be the altar where heaven touches earth. And every mother, every woman who chooses life, legacy, and love over lies, is standing in direct opposition to the forces that want to erase what God has written. This is more than politics. This is more than preference. This is a war over identity, destiny, and the very foundation of human existence. The enemy isn't afraid of motherhood because it is weak. He fears it because it is the gateway through which the plans of God enter the earth. He fears it because every child born carries within them the potential to crush darkness underfoot, to speak truth with boldness, to carry the fire of awakening to nations. And every mother, whether biological, adoptive, or spiritual, has the power to shape that fire, to fan it into flame, or to see it extinguished before it begins. The world may not applaud her. She may not trend, go viral, or receive awards. But in the courts of heaven, her name is known. Her prayers are recorded, her sacrifices are remembered, her legacy is eternal, because when she rocks a cradle, she shakes the future. When she teaches her children to pray, she is tearing down strongholds. When she chooses truth over convenience, she is making war on the lies that enslave a generation. This is not a small calling. It is not a secondary role. It is front-line spiritual warfare wrapped in diapers, tears, songs, and scripture. And yet, in all this, the call is not just to women. It is to the whole body of Christ. We must rise up and restore honor to motherhood. We must lift up the hands of the women who are fighting in silence. We must protect the womb, defend the sacred, and once again see children as a reward, not a burden. We must raise a generation of women who do not apologize for their design, but walk boldly in their divine identity. And we must raise a generation of men who do not compete with the strength of women, but cover it, cherish it, and call it forth. If we want revival, we must start where God starts, with life. If we want awakening, we must first awaken to what we've allowed to die. The end-time war against motherhood is real, but so is the victory promised to those who stand. Let the world rage, let the culture shift, let the darkness press in, but let mothers rise. Let women arise with fire in their bones and truth on their tongues. Let the womb be redeemed, let the warriors return to their posts. Because when motherhood is restored, the gates of hell cannot prevail.